In this video, we're going to take a look at performing an automated group sync within Graphene. And so here I am actually at the Graphene GitHub page, and we're going to go over here to the wiki and pull up the Graphene group sync wiki. So as you can see here, and as it is spelled out within this document, there is a number of different APIs that you can call which will allow you to synchronize groups within a Graphene installation. There's three real methods that you're going to want to take advantage of, typically getting the members of a particular group, adding members to a group, and deleting members from a group, as well as we're going to need to set up access permissions and all of that. So this is something that realistically, if you're going to write a group sync integration, this is something that would be custom code that would be written by an end user. But I do have a reference implementation here, and this is actually within the Graphene code base itself, where we've got some example users set up. We've got a couple groups here, students and staff. We're pointing at a particular Graphene installation, which would obviously have to be changed to meet whatever the needs are. And then we have a basic synchronization logic, which goes through, pulls the different groups and their users, and then adds and removes users depending on what the delta is or what the difference is between the two of those. So I'm going to go through the process of setting those things up right here just as an example. So the first thing that we need to do if we go back to this documentation is we really need to set up API access permissions. And so basically any external application which is going to communicate with the Graphene installation, and when I say external application, in this case I'm referring to a group synchronization application, they're going to need to connect in with basic HTTP authentication credentials. So we set that up by going over here into my my Graphene installation, and so I'll jump right back here to the Graphene installation. So I'm right here on the home page, and since I am a site administrator, and a site administrator is required for this, I can go into admin and I can click on API accounts here. And we've actually already got one in here. I'm going to delete that and we'll set it up from scratch. So I'm going to create a new API account. The name will be, let's see, we'll just call it test1. And the secret will be test1 as well. So this is really the username and the password for an external API to connect into this thing. All right, so test1 and test1. All right, and so that's now been set up. And so what I can do now, and as was indicated here, there was this this reference code which shows how this works. But I actually have this running locally on my local machine here. And so here it is. We've got the groupsync.php code. We've got our users here, we've got our groups, and then we've got our synchronization stuff. And so I can just call this literally just by calling php groupsync.php, and that will execute it. But before we can actually run this and have it do something meaningful, we have to do some basic configuration and setup. So this script, the way it's written, does not actually create any groups on the Graphene instance. It will synchronize the populations of a particular group, but it does require that the groups are already set up. So in here in our code, we reference students and staff. Let's go ahead and change that, and we'll call it Group A and Group B. So we're going to have a Group A and a Group B. And actually, while we're in here, we can actually update our username and password to test1 and test1, since those were the accounts that we created before. But now we need to go over to our Graphene instance, and we need to create groups, and specifically the slug needs to be called Group A and Group B. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll go back to here and we'll click on groups, and we're going to create a group called Group A, and our slug will be Group A exactly as we created it over on the other side, and we're going to have Group B. Group B. Okay, so press save there. And if I were to look at these and I were to look at the members of each of these groups, you'll notice that this group has no members, right? So there are no members of those two groups because we just created them just now. So if we jump back over here to our code, so now we have our Group A and our Group B. Group A is currently made up of two users, one with the user ID 1 and one with the user ID 2. So it looks like Group A, if we execute it the way we do it here, would be John Doe, and looks like, here I'll change that one to Jane Doe, so we keep those separate. So we have Jane Doe, John Doe and Jane Doe will be a member of Group A. And Group B will be 2, 3, and 4. So Jane Doe, and then we've got a couple of vendors here, Tony Stark and Groot. So those would be the populations if I run this as it is. The URL here is just the basic URL of the Graphene instance. So if we were to look at that, I have tim@work.eschurlabs.com:8000. So that's pretty straightforward. We have our credentials, our username and password here, which is test1 and test1. And we should be able to just go ahead and run this. Now, you may notice, and if I jump back over here to my database, that none of those users currently exist within this Graphene installation. And so part of the synchronization process, when we call this add members code, and if I scroll down here and we look at the documentation, adding members to a group, you'll notice here that, so if a given user exists, the user record will be updated with the new information. If a user cannot be found, the user will be created. So in the process here of populating these groups, we're actually going to be creating new users as well with the information that we have in these user objects. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Let's run it, PHP, and we're going to run the group sync code. And so let's see. Did I not save this? We got group students and group staff. Why is that? Let's see, possibly I didn't save that. Let's run it again. There we go. So we have group A and we have group B. So sorry, the reason that didn't work before was because I hadn't actually saved the code yet. But now we've got group A and we've got group B. So in running through this code, it says it's looking up the existing users, or looking up the existing members. And so it says group A in Graphene currently has 0 members, and so we're looking up the correct members, and when it says correct members, it's really pulling from this code right here. It says it should have 2 members, so it goes out and says, okay, it's going to add 2 members to group A, and then it says, okay, well, it successfully added 2 members to group A. And it does the same thing with group B, so it says that there are no existing members, it should have 3 members, and it goes ahead and adds those 3 members. So now let's look at what we have in our database here, and if we refresh the users, you'll notice that we now have 4 new users that have been added. John Doe, Jane Doe, Tony Stark, and Groot as well have all been added. And additionally, if we look at the membership, let's go back over here, and let's look at the members now of Group A. We now see that we have John and Jane Doe, and if we look at the members of Group B, we now have Groot, Tony Stark, and Jane Doe as well. So let's now try to remove some users from a group. So if we go back over here, and we're going to say group A is now not going to have any users, and group B is only going to have John Doe, right? John Doe was the first user here. So let's run the script again. All right, so we ran group A. It currently has 2 members. It should have 0 members, and so we removed 2 members from group A. So if we look at group B, it currently has 3 members. It should have 1 member, so it adds 1 new member, and then it removes 3 members from the group because we actually totally changed those populations. And if we go back over here, you'll notice actually we haven't deleted any users. We haven't changed them or anything here. But if I refresh that one group that we had before, now it only has John Doe in it. And similarly, if we go back to group A, you'll notice that we have no members in there. So that worked correctly. The last thing I want to show, though, is that in addition to synchronizing the members and creating new users, as is the case that we need to do so, we can actually update user information as part of this group synchronization process. So let's go ahead and change John Doe here to Mr. John Doe. All right? And so actually, if I just run this as is, you'll notice that it's not actually going to do anything. And the reason is because we've already synchronized the users correctly, and because we haven't actually taken any action, the users don't actually change at all. So John Doe is still John Doe. But if we were to add John Doe to a different group, forcing it now to perform a synchronization, now we'll do something different. So we've added John Doe to group A. And let's go ahead and run this code again. And so yeah, okay, group A should have 1 member attempting to add 1 new user to the group. So it did that. And if we look at our name here, we have Mr. John Doe. And so if we go back over to here to our group, look at group B, and again, Mr. John Doe has been done. So this is a really basic proof of concept for the group population synchronization. Obviously, if an end user or an end user application was trying to do something similar, you probably wouldn't have a nicely defined array of your groups, hard-coded into your code somewhere. This would probably be something where you're querying from some external database, and then you're trying to build these objects on the fly. But realistically, the code that I've got in here is more or less going to be the same code that you would run to do something like this. There are some additional APIs that are available for actually creating groups and updating groups, but for the sake of this particular implementation, we are really just using the groups that we have currently defined within Graphene, and then adding and removing users based on those different populations. So that's about it. Thanks for watching.